We are now live. I would like to apologize for us being an hour later than usual because I was so stressed out from my driving lesson and so excited by my passing of my course 100% first time that
Hey.
Thank you. David, you
They
said
know
you...
that we're an hour late. I mean, they can just watch it whenever, right?
Oh, well, that's true, but we don't really have any regular viewers, so it's always sitting at 0 viewers.
Well, this is going to be a rare episode when I'm in it all the way from the beginning.
Yes. And Google's messaging me. Oh, okay. Looks, Maddie's on his way. He may or may not make it. Right. And David, you said you were feeling a little run down?
I am. I've had a very exciting few weeks. I don't do this very often, so it's unusual for me. But I did a live show at a convention last weekend, and part of that meant working for weeks and weeks, getting ready for that, setting up new songs, recording the background music for them, deciding what to do, because I had an hour set that I had to fill, and I had an hour I had to fill and half an hour's set, so I expanded that, and in the end it went to exactly an hour without even timing it. But there's a funny noise outside just then. But then because of that, then there was I had to sort of do work related to that when I got home, and essentially I only just stopped working yesterday on mad, weird, unusual things, and went back to working on ordinary things. So I'm quite sort of wound down, as it were. But that's why if I sound sleepy and talk slowly, that's why. But otherwise, everything's good.
Wound down like
a bit like a robot.
To this week's topic. And Dave, since you were talking already, please tell us your earliest memories of robots.
I can do exactly that because I remember precisely what my first robot was. It was and I haven't been able to track this down. So if yourselves or anyone who watches this can help me with this, then please do. There was an episode in, I believe, season 2 of the TV version of Wonder Woman. And in it, Wonder Woman fights robots. I guess, looking back, I assume what it is that there are robots, and but I was so young, less than 2 years old, I think, that I was still in that phase of your life where you weirdly interpret what you see in terms of things you already know, and you don't actually get them right. So I'll tell you how I interpreted robots in a moment, but just to give you an example of what I'm talking about, the first time I saw a moth, was a moth. It was stuck to it was sort of perched, if you will. You know how doors will often have like a rectangular shape, as you can see on the doors in the background of my shot here. They'll have rectangular shapes. Well, the moth was perched just sort of there, underneath the top of the rectangular shape on the back door in our house. And I thought, I didn't realize it was a living being. I just thought it was a clump of mud. So I reached out and poked it. Dad said, "No, don't, that's a moth." And when I poked it, it surprised it so much that it fell down. So I thought a moth was a shape-shifting animal that can disguise itself as ordinary earth, and then if you touch it, it falls down. That's what I thought a moth was, because I've just interpreted the bare facts of that experience. So all I can tell you about my first experience with robots is what I interpreted the bare facts as. And so here they are. A robot is a human which underneath its skin secretly is made of ice, and when you fight it, if you kill it, it will die by slowly melting with its shoulders rolling up and down like this until it sinks down into the floor and melts. Now, evidently, this is a very roundabout definition of what a robot is, and I was very quickly able to improve it. But this is because in the images I actually remember from the episode are that there was one shot with a family, and it turns out to be a surprise that someone in that room is a robot who is in communication with Wonder Woman, and so you see them stand and address the camera with this angular bluish face, which I at the time interpreted as ice. So that's where I got the ice from. There's a few bits where I don't know where I got the melting from, because I don't remember any robots melting. What I do remember is that she punches one and he sinks to the floor very slowly in a dramatic kind of, overplayed death scene with, as I say, shoulders rolling like that until he kind of crumples into a heap. So I guess they were going with that, and I just interpreted it as like melting like the Witch of the West. And so on. That's kind of all I remember. I'm guessing that in that episode they were actually in disguise as people, and that's why I got that impression. So I've been looking for this episode, and a while ago I did actually track down which episode it was, or which episode it probably was. And as I say, I think it turned out to be in Season 2, but I wasn't able to get Season 2, so I still haven't seen it. So one day I will relive my ancient robot memories.
Right. Zachary.
Earliest memories of robots. And if you hear a lot of noise, it's because I'm working on something that I was supposed to be working on earlier today, but kind of put it off.
Right. No worries.
Right. You might have to mute your mic when you're not talking, because it is quite noisy.
Yep. But now he's
Sorry about
talking about his earliest memories of robots.
But as to robots,
I guess my earliest memory of robots was oh man. Well, the first time I ever really identified something as a robot was I was about 10 years old, and I was watching. I guess it would have to probably be Star Wars and C-3PO.
really.
And like R2-D2 were probably the first exposure I had to robots. But I just thought they were. I really didn't know they were officially robots at the time. So I went back and was just like, oh, like years later, I was like, oh yeah, that's a robot. But I mean, I just kind of knew, oh, they were like machines or something. But like the first time I really ever identified anything as a robot was when I saw Terminator.
Really? When did you see
Yes.
Terminator?
Around the same time. So, because I understood, because I never identified R2-D2 as a robot. I kind of identified him as, I think I identified him as basically just a machine.
Right. I think that is
And-
partly because in Star Wars they're never referred to as robots, but as droids.
Yeah, and so I was just, oh, it's a droid, and so I was just like, I eventually later came up and just like, okay, those are officially robots. But, but like, first time I ever saw Terminator, I was like, yes, that's a robot. Because it had sort of that humanoid look, and I mean, at first when I first saw it, it was like, that was, oh, it's just a monster wearing like, it's just like this monster wearing wearing flesh, and then like when he gets his face burnt part off, and you see like the metal parts underneath, I'm just like, okay, that's a robot. That's definitely a robot. And so, yeah, so that was my real first experience with robots, and from then on, I associated with robots as a killer death machine. So.
And disguised as humans as well, like me.
Yes.
Which is to say that I thought robots were disguised as humans, not that I'm disguised as a human.
Yeah.
Okay, much like Zach, my first one would have been C-3PO and R2-D2, and as I mentioned in an earlier podcast at the time, I thought they were real robots.
Mm.
I think that's when we talked about movies. I thought it was a movie, but I thought Offset. That's how they were. They were actual robots. I even thought the same thing of Big Bird in Sesame Street.
Really?
It was, yes, I didn't think there was a man in there. I just honestly thought he was just a very advanced robot, and I was thinking, I'm so glad that I live in a world with robots.
See, you should have watched Short Circuit first, because there's no one inside Short Circuit. Inside
Oh,
25.
that's... Yeah, I do like my robot movies, and I did enjoy that when it came out. But for me, I feel like I almost came into this world with an inherent knowing of robots, because I don't ever remember learning what robots or computers were. I remember being very excited when we got our first computer. I was only 5, and it was like, we're getting a computer. I was like, oh my god, we're getting a computer. I knew what a computer was. I knew why I was excited, but I don't ever remember learning or being told what a computer was. I just knew. Also, there's a book in the bookshelf in a different room. I wonder if I'd run off and get it. I won't get it. It's just a big hard copy, like coffee table book, I think they're called. The ones that just sit on and it's just called Robots. And I got that in the 80s because I loved robots. There's like a little cutesy tape playing robot on the front, and it talks about all the different robots, the fictional robots, the actual robots that they were working on back then. And the last couple of chapters is like the machine arm building cars robots.
Those are always. I don't like those because I grew up, as did you, in a time when whenever you were talking about real robots, straight away everybody would go to these. The robot arms build cars, and I would go, I couldn't care less about either the construction of cars or any robot without a face.
Exactly, because that's almost like what Zach was saying, machines. To me, those ones are just machines. They're a mechanical arm, not a robot. A robot,
and then they would always go into, but the definition of robot is a machine that helps man. That's the definition of a machine.
Right. Yes, I would say a robot is generally humanoid, although it could be like a dog or a dinosaur. Some sort of... What? There's Robot. Roboraptor? Where, if you think about it, it's something that resembles a living thing. So it's got legs, 2 eyes, etc. And it's like the Robo Sapien series of robots.
Well, except R2-D2, and that's one of, still, to this day, one of the really clever design decisions about R2-D2 is that it's not humanoid, it doesn't have a face, it has like one thing that resembles an eye on one side and something that resembles an eye somewhere else, so that you always have something to look at, but it's a little person, and yet it is, and we think of it as one, and that's still clever. It's a rare thing that we get to see something like that.
Do you think in any way, shape, or form that the astromech design was inspired by the Daleks?
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? You know what? I've never thought of that before, but there is something I have thought of, which is, do you remember, I don't know if they still have them now, but do you remember that in the 80s and 90s, you would go into some department stores, and in the ceiling they would have essentially like Dalek heads or R2-D2 heads, and it would be like a dome covered in cameras, and these would be the security cameras for the shop.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yes.
Well, I used to call them Dalek heads, and Americans would call them R2-D2 heads.
Oh, okay.
And like, it seems like there's, we all would recognize the similar domed shape with bits and bobs on it as those two things. So there's obviously a similarity in design. Whether they were actually inspired or not is a very interesting point.
Maybe it was one of those accidental, like, subconscious things where it's not intentionally designed that way, but if you trace it deep through the subconscious mind of those people, there could be a link. Probably, or more likely, for a practical reason, like to put a person inside a machine and move it around. That's the optimum shape, for an actor to get it. Yeah, true enough. Also, for Christmas once, I got. I knew what it was going in. Like, it was me to put it out for a Christmas present. It wheeled along. It looked very sort of 60s, 50s, 60s sci-fi, that kind of a robot. Put batteries in it. You could manually move its arms, and it just had claws here, but it had 4 pistons that went up and down on its chest as it moved forwards.
Was this one of the Omnibot series?
I don't know what they are. I will have a look. Omni.
If you Google it, you'll probably either see or not see your robot, and then you'll know.
Okay, waiting for the page to load.
Omnibot, O-M-N-I.
No, definitely
No?
not. Although the Omnibot does look a lot like the robot on the cover of my book. A lot.
Well, I wouldn't be at all surprised if it was. Allow me to deviate slightly. Oh, you found it!
Oh, hang on. I have found...
I saw the
book.
face of a man who's just seen something he knows very well.
Yeah, hang on. I've got to do a screen share here.
Yeah.
Right.
That is... yeah, that is the book I'm talking about.
And that is an Omnibot.
Yeah, that's the... I still have that book.
Wow. So, I tell you what, so you tell us about the piston robot, and then I'll tell you about Omnibot, because that was the first robot I owned.
Oh, there's nothing really to tell. I've sort of said
No.
it. He walked along on wheels. He really walked, but his legs sort of had wheels underneath, and they sort of went back and forth as he moved forward. 4 AA batteries, and I think I may still have it somewhere.
Well, so my robot, it actually wasn't Omnibot, but if you were to Google, I think Omnibot Junior. Yeah,
Okay.
Omnibot Junior, or just Omni Junior, which is what it was called in the UK. You will find what is, by the 80s standards, an extremely sweet-looking little baby robot.
Yeah.
Now, but it was big, though. It was, almost too much for me at the time to lift. And what it was it was just because I asked for a remote-controlled robot for Christmas, and I got one, and I got more than I bargained for. I was expecting, because when I asked, it was I was sufficiently young that I wasn't talking about any particular one. I was just like, can I have a remote-controlled robot? Because I understood those existed, and I got this really quite lavish one. And what would happen is, God, this thing was beautiful. I wonder if it still works. You turned it on, and it went, "Hello, I'm Omni Junior," and it had all these modes, so you could walk it around using the remote control. Or what you could do is you could hide, keep the remote control with you, hide, press hide and seek, and it would then track the remote control. So it would be like, "I'm coming, I'm coming," and it would follow you around. And that was what you're supposed to do: hide and let it find you by homing in. But what you could do is, you could just walk around and have this robot follow you. It had all sorts of little features like that. Like it had a bumper on the front, and it had a sensor, so it would never bump into anything. So as it was walking around, just on homing in mode, it would see the wall, not hit the wall, back off, turn round, and move somewhere else. But if you did poke its little bumper, it would go, "That tickles," which was quite nice. But here's the thing: this was a great little feature, and I don't know who thought of this. Now and then, because it was a little boy robot, it would just randomly get into a temper tantrum, and when it did, it's like all of its previous functions would change to reflect this. So now, if you pressed its bumper, it would go, "Ow, that hurts," and it would I can't remember what else it did, but it would just everything it would do would be angry now, and I think maybe even its eyes would change color or something like that. No, they were always red, so it was always set to evil. But this robot was absolutely wonderful. Okay, but then the reason I know about such a thing as Omnibot is because we went to Toys R Us, and this was when going to Toys R Us was a new thing you could do. I think it had been introduced to the UK before this, but it felt brand new. Maybe they just opened one in a town near to me or something. And this was if you go to Toys R Us now, any Toys R Us now, nearly, what you'll find is a good, a big toy shop.
Yep.
But if you went to Toys R Us then, and this isn't just because of the size of me, I've sort of talked to my parents about this basically, and other people. It was a palace of toys then. It was so much on such a grander scale, even within the same buildings that they are now, because you can still go to the same ones now.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like a manageable amount of shelves, it was like being in the stock room for a Toys R Us. Essentially, the shelves went to the ceiling. There were ladders that the staff had to go on to get some of the top stuff. It was like ridiculous on just the scale that it was on. And they used to have way more like lavish bits, such as glass cabinets filled with things to look at, demo models of things, and there's an alarm outside, hope you can ignore that. And
I hear it.
one of the things that they had when I was there, they had, do you remember, Speak and Spell, obviously you remember, do you remember Speak and Music?
Speaking music.
No.
Would you
Same
say Mary
concept.
had a little? Yeah, go.
More or less. It was more like you had this was when Speak and Spell was, instead of having physical buttons, they were just drawings of buttons, but they still worked. This Speak and Music had drawings of essentially keys on a keyboard and things like this, and it would be like, so copy me level 1, play do do do, and you would have to play the right notes and so on. So anyway, that was there that was an example of the sort of thing that you could just have a go on in Toys R Us in those days. And they had this glass cabinet of robots, and it was just amazing. And the three that I really remembered was Omni Junior's family. There was my robot, Omni Junior. There was a middle-sized one, which was called, like, I thought it was called Omnibot Brother. It wasn't. It was just called Omnibot, and I decided it was Omni Junior's brother. Or it probably said, Omni Junior is Omnibot's brother or whatever. And it was essentially a bigger Omni Junior, slightly more lavish. And then there was the Omnibot 2000. Now, I thought I'd made that name up as just a way, because in those days we added the number 2000 to anything we wanted to sound impressive.
Right.
Now that we're past the year 2000, it's not quite as impressive anymore. But no, I looked it up, and it was called the Omnibot 2000, I believe. And this was tall, articulated. It had like a thin head with these two bulbous eyes on it, a bit like a Johnny Five. It had fingers that could individually move, and its front was just covered in buttons, just programmable stuff you could get it to do. Amazing. Oh my god, I just thought, I could eBay one now. I could own an Omnibot 2000 these days. Oh, I might have to do that.
I'm going to do it right now.
I'm going to do it. So that was, I wonder how much, it's probably thousands of pounds now. But that was my first exposure to, like, the idea of a robot that could be owned in the home. And the reason that it's worth mentioning this is that, as I was telling you guys offline the other day, there is this new robot that you can own called, I believe, Jibo. Did you see that?
GBO?
JIBO. There's a link to the Indiegogo campaign. Someone has designed, finally, and actually like released, and you can actually get it, the robot we all imagined having growing up. It doesn't move around. That's the only thing. You put it on a table and it stays there.
So it's in a speaker, basically.
It's so much more than that. It pivots in a very characteristic way. But what it is essentially, it's got an open platform for apps, but it has a recorded voice that talks to you. You can use it as a kind of personal assistant type thing. It's basically a bit better than Siri in that way, or at least that's the plan.
Right.
But it sort of moves and pivots and has a sweet little head, and it's designed to feel like a little pet or something, and it's just so sweet. You should mute the sound but pop the video on that I've just linked to, and you'll see how lovely it is. So if that lives up to its promise, then that could genuinely be the start of the robot in the home that we were emulating with remote control robots like Omni Junior in the 80s.
Well, I think Japan has already got a handle on the robot in the workspace, the business robot, about the size of a 12-year-old child, and is, of course, Asimo.
Yes.
Yep. Who does, when the nuclear disaster hit, they sent requests to Honda for please send us Asimos to do this. They said he's not built for that. He's built to walk on flat surfaces, upstairs, downstairs. Very much a business robot, not a manual labor robot. But they are now dedicated to making a manual labor version of him.
Really? Oh
Yes.
dear, that's the start of the fall of mankind, isn't it? When manual labor is replaced by robots entirely.
Has anyone
Go, Zach.
speaking of just that reminded me, anyone here ever seen the Animatrix?
Yes.
When it was new, I don't remember it now, I'm afraid.
They did one of the stories. The best story on that entire thing was the Second Renaissance, which is all about how we created servant robots for the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And
Butlers, essentially.
yeah, and just when you mentioned that, that reminded me of that's what started like when you said the downfall of mankind, because one of the robots actually wanted rights because his owner, or actually his master, was going to shut him down because he wanted to get the new model.
Mm-hmm.
And the robot, because he viewed that as he viewed it as it was basically going to take his own life. It was an act of murder against the machine. The machine killed him, and they said that was. And the robot basically argued, "No, I was defending myself." And they said, "Doesn't matter. You're a robot. He's a human. He has more rights inherently than you." But
well, this is one of the. That's one of the sort of classic themes for science fiction stories about robots, isn't it? That at what point do the closer we make robots to people, we eventually have to treat them as people, and at that point, they're capable of anything and tend to overthrow us.
That was a point often made, certainly in the beginning of the Astro Boy Japanese cartoon series. That there was like the robot carnivals where the robots were mistreated, and there were activist groups saying no, that they have free will, they have intelligence. We must now treat them as such. They are no longer machines. We must treat them as our equals and give them their own rights.
Well, it goes all the way back. I mean, that, when the concept of robots was new, probably every science fiction author wrote about that topic because it is a really interesting topic, and we talk, we sort of by using because the best science fiction stories, the point of them is to actually talk about something in our own world, and so the old, if depending on how old a story goes back, I don't know if there were any robot rights stories during, for instance, the days when slavery still existed, or if it was more of a kind of a sort of a thoughtful idea about like what rights, what a person is. That's always a theme that was explored with it, and people would use robots as a sort of a shorthand to let people think about themselves and what sentience means and what people are. But I'm trying to think if Asimov ever wrote any, because we shouldn't go through a robot podcast without mentioning Asimov, who really, he's credited with
laws.
He's credited with kind of giving us, not inventing robots, but kind of
modernizing,
being like the grandfather of robot fiction. Sorry, Ian, what was that?
Modernizing robots. Kind
of, but the interesting thing about his stories, which I only read about, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, is that they completely hold up today and are still exciting and new when you come to them. They don't feel dated at all, because he wasn't writing about like, oh, there might be people who are robots. Instead, he went the R2-D2 route. Like, he was explicitly writing about machines, but using the fact that of what robots do and the laws that he created to essentially write mystery stories. So, like,
Right.
have you guys read the Asimov robot stories or any of them?
I've heard about it in great detail.
I actually followed this guy online who he talked about a full motion video game based off of the Robots series by Asimov. And so that's my extent of the knowledge, is reading about a couple of articles online about that and basically what he had to say about it. And I did like his description of how Asimov created the rules, and then he stepped back, let people digest them, and like, oh, these are the rules, they're solid, and then he basically said, let's turn it on its head.
Yeah, that's the thing people don't realize about the robot rules that he created, because they're still cited now as like, the point of them is that they're perfect, and that if you create robots with these 3 laws in their heads, then there will not be a robot uprising. And so let's try and remember what they are. So it's a robot can't.
We can Google them.
Yeah.
Is
A robot cannot harm a person. A robot cannot allow a person to come to harm.
By inaction.
Inaction cause harm to a person, and a robot must obey all commands given to it by a person, unless it interferes with the first 2 robot laws of robotics.
That's it. Now, iRobot, the book, is actually just a short collection of short stories that he wrote over the years. And then there was the rest of the robots, which was a collection of more of them. Now you can get The Complete Robot, which is all the robot stories he ever wrote. But I think it's probably best to read iRobot first if you're curious, purely because that stitches the stories together with a sort of like almost like historical, here's what happened with robots through the years, sort of story that bubbles all the way through it, and you get little extra chapters in between the stories to sort of stitch them together in a way that's very satisfying and easy to read and quick. It's a short book and so rewarding, and you should probably, if you're at all interested in robots, have a look. Because yes, what he does is, everyone forgets what the point of the laws of robotics were, because what they purport to be, what they claim to be, is the 3 perfect laws that mean nothing will go wrong if robots are created with these. What they actually are is a conceit for Asimov to be able to write mysteries and puzzles through, because his robots do not have uprisings, his robots do not harm humans, but what they do is they act weirdly, or they do stuff that no one can figure out what it is they're even doing. And then, by examining the 3 laws of robotics, you figure out, oh, so this one thinks that, and is therefore responding to that law of robotics, and that's why it's doing this. Not in a, why is this robot going on a rampage? That never happens, as far as I can remember. Just stuff like, there is, for example, there's one where they find out that this robot has just been trundling round and round in a giant circle around a lake on another planet for years or something, and nobody can figure out why or get it to stop. And they have to figure out what someone once said to it that it's still responding to, that sort of thing. And the stories are just great. They really are, and they completely hold up. So do have a look at those.
Okay. I just want to read Zach did get the 3 laws correctly, but I just want to read them straight through so we can hear like the original wording.
Yeah.
1. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. 2.
Oh, that's one law.
A robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. 3. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
Yes.
So you said something there, David?
Oh, I was just expressing my surprise that what we thought were 2 separate laws are in fact one law, that they can't through inaction allow harm. And then there came the film I, Robot in the last few years, which
we've all seen that. Will Smith.
Sorry?
Will Smith.
Yeah.
Shia LaBeouf. Yeah.
Yeah. This was a disliked film. I liked it at the time. Then I watched it again a few years later and didn't like it. But this is one of those films where I feel like the reasons why. Okay, when it was new and people didn't like it at first, I think a lot of the complaints that I saw were not accurate. So it's like, you know what I mean? So like some of the reasons people didn't like it, I don't think are right. But it's not a very good film, so that's a good reason to dislike it, you know? And the thing that I objected to was that there was 2 points. The first one, that Asimov robots would never go on a rampage. That's quite right. But what they did do is they made sure that at least, you know, as far as can be expected, what was happening with the robots was because of the 3 laws of robotics, which I thought was actually a perfectly good and interesting sort of twist on it, and in fact was an extension of one that Asimov did use in one of his stories. He just used it in a rather more kind way. And the other complaint was that Will Smith was his character was the kind of unreasonable, oh, I hate robots, I'm suspicious of robots, and there was a lot of, well, why would someone in an Asimov robots world ever be like that? It's the same as if we were suspicious of toasters. But I disagree with that as well, because the film, I suspect those people didn't watch the whole film, because it explains very clearly in the latter half why, because of the 3 laws of robotics, he was suspicious of robots, which again, anything where the laws of robotics are used to explain the mystery, to me, makes it, even if it's not done as well as Asimov would, to me, makes it a valid attempt at adapting Asimov. So all that's left is, was it a good film? Not really. So that's a great reason not to like it.
Recently re-released straight to Blu-ray in 3D.
No way!
Yeah, it never did the whole cinematic re-release. Straight to Blu-ray 3D re-release.
Sure. Gosh, I didn't know that. You know, it's so promising, that film. Like, I kind of like it. I like the things that happen in it. I like I like the cast. You know, Pike from the new Star Trek. Sorry, guys, is in it, and he's a good actor. And you know, it's all right. But then, and Will Smith's good in it. He is. There's like the part where he's recounting the unpleasant memory that led him to be suspicious of robots. That's a good bit of acting. He's quite good.
Yeah.
But the problem with it is the script is so snippy, snappy, one-linery, and it's just not
very
good enough.
Hollywood.
And of course, sorry, go on.
No, go. You finish your thought, then I'll.
I was just going to say the last remaining reason why the film was disliked was that, and I haven't yet experienced this, was that Asimov apparently and someone else did write a perfect iRobot screenplay, which everyone watching the film who's invested in Asimov had read, and were like, well, this is like 2% as good as the script that should have been made into a film. So that's another valid reason.
I think iRobot, the book, would work well as a TV series.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and not just iRobot the book, but like the works of Asimov, the robot stories of Asimov. Be an amazing TV series.
Also, probably good for vlogs as well.
Vlogs?
Vlogs, like, not vlogs, like a webisodes. A web series?
Oh! Yeah, yeah, probably.
Dracula would be fantastic as vlogs.
Yeah.
That's a whole other topic.
Oh, well, honestly, I think that might be coming, because you've got, you know, Hank Green has now turned Pride and Prejudice into a vlog series, hasn't he? And
yes.
And I think he's working on another one now. So maybe Dracula will be, or Frankenstein will be coming up next. Oh no, they're
I
doing
would-
Frankenstein. They're doing
Oh.
Frankenstein now, actually.
Really?
As a vlog?
Yeah, it's they've changed it. I don't know if Hank Green's involved in this one or if it's someone else, but I think he is. It's Frankenstein is now a. And by the way, Frankenstein
Is a robot.
could
Sort of.
could arguably be called maybe the first or an early robot story because he's brought to life with electricity and a man that's made by another man. But anyway, yes, Frankenstein in the web series is basically a teenage girl who's, or she seems to be anyway. Maybe she's just a very young woman who seems to be this sort of secret genius scientist, but her university doesn't like what she's doing, and so on and so on. And that I only watched the first couple of episodes, so I didn't get to the part where there was a Frankenstein's monster. But
I would like to see the Wizard of Oz as vlogs, but people often argue that Frankenstein is the world's first, also the world's first well-known science fiction story. I have an argument for that. Science fiction is often about the tale of, what does it mean to be human, like we were talking about, and some people explore that through robots, and some people through genetics. I would argue, if of science fiction the question is what it means to be human, then the first science fiction is not Frankenstein, but Pinocchio.
oh, well, that's if it came first.
Beg your pardon?
That's if it came first, unless you're rejecting Frankenstein. You know what? It looks like they happened at about the same time.
Oh.
Oh
Really?
no, you're right. No, you're right. Hang on. No, Frankenstein was quite a long time before Pinocchio. Actually, it's Frankenstein
Really?
is 1818. Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
Pinocchio, 1883. But I absolutely agree. Yeah, that, and of course, since we now have seen through Astro Boy what happens if you literally just make Pinocchio a robot and go with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. That's another robot story, isn't it? It's the anime. I guess before we figured out machines, before we knew what those would look like, we were already writing stories about robots, but they were golems and animated knickknacks such as
Dave,
Pinocchio.
you're British, so I'm hoping you're aware of this one particular British sitcom that focused on a particular robot.
Remind me,
Metal.
Mickey.
Yes.
I am only aware of that secondhand, I'm afraid. That was no longer on when I was watching such things, so I don't know anything about it. I know what Metal Mickey looks like.
Basically, it's a British sitcom that very much follows any generic sitcom formula where, the quirky character is the robot. Every sitcom has a quirky character. It's definitely on YouTube. I checked ages ago, so if either of you ever want to check it out, there are full episodes on YouTube of Metal Mickey. With a great theme song, because I used to watch it when I was a kid. Yeah. Do-do-do-do-do-do. I'm disappointed that you didn't have more to say on the topic of Metal Mickey.
Yeah, I'm very sorry. Well, the fact is that I was born in 1982, and Metal Mickey, according to this, finished in 1983, and simply doesn't seem to have been repeated. Like I never saw it on TV.
Right. See, being here in Australia, it would have taken forever to get here. So I would have seen what to the British would have been reruns, but to me were brand new.
Yeah. I mean, to give you a sense of how old Metal Mickey was, it would appear, according to Wikipedia, that his catchphrase was boogie, which was already something that was only really said either as a joke or like by children trying to sound cool and getting it wrong in my day.
Right. Can I just confirm with you, David, that your Chinese star sign is Year of the Dog?
I don't know.
Okay. So, what month were you born in?
March.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you're Year of the Dog. Also, I have something to show you. This is
Oh.
more to do with AI than robots, but they sort of go part and parcel
Absolutely, hand in hand.
together. Screen share. Hello. This.
Who?
I'm talking with friends. Could you hear what she said just then?
No.
No.
It's a very computery voice, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But there are different heads that you can download. But what's unique about this particular AI is it supposedly, quote, learns, but it has a text file that you can edit. So you could, for example, use this as a teacher or as like a medical enhancer thing. Hang on, I'm going to ask her, do you have any friends? Oh, I'm so disappointed that you can't hear that.
No, we just see the text, I'm afraid.
You are your...
I'm disappointed as well, because I'm a fan of frightening robot voices. I'm guessing you mean the kind of robot voice, like a modern speech generator.
Yeah, it's one of those... You can tell it's trying to sound like a human and it's failing miserably. It's called a Verbot and is free.
Oh.
So if you are there we go. If you want to download your very own Verbot, you can go here.
Oh.
Good
Hi,
morning,
Matt.
Matthew. Here. From Softpedia. I've just been showing some artificial intelligence. I don't know if you saw it, Matthew. The Verbot with an editable text file. Okay, Maddie, because you've come late, it's your turn to talk of your earliest robot memories. Maddie, who seems to be growing a goatee. We can't hear you.
No sound, I'm afraid.
Your microphone's turned on, we just can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
No sound, I'm afraid.
We should learn sign language for when things like this happen.
Yes.
So we can just... and all that. So, yeah, so if there's the link right there, and for our viewers at home, I'll put the link in the comment section at the end of the podcast.
Okay, let's find out if his mic's working this time. No.
Say something.
No.
No.
Turn
Sorry,
the
Matty.
actual microphone on your computer up. Because sometimes that's a problem. It's turned off and you don't realize. Or the little switch there, mute microphone, unmute. Sometimes it's as simple as that.
Oh.
Yes, so that's a thing there. You can download different heads to talk to that come with different default settings. Just going to say goodbye to her.
A, B, C, D.
Yes,
Yes.
we hear you.
Here we are.
So, your first robot memory.
My first robot memory, genuine memory, would have been a little collectible figure model, do-it-yourself of a... I'm struggling to remember what they're called, but Ian will know them straight away. The fighter jets from the Macross saga, or Robotech.
Veritech fighters.
Yeah, the Viper V, whatever. And there's a little plane with little legs because they half transform. They can transform into a full human or just like have a plane with legs. And that was my first encounter with a robot that I can remember.
The
It was
little
a
plane with legs.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Hang on. Image search, screen share coming.
He's on it.
Veritech fighters. There we go. That's them.
That's it.
Oh, cool.
There's even one there made of Lego. See the red one with the red canopy? That is
Very
Lego.
nice. Very nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, the little plane with the legs sticking out the bottom. There was a little
Yep.
model, and I guess alongside that would have been Transformers and Star Wars, but the actual memory is of that little robot and that little show. But yeah, that's my first memory.
But could it be argued that those technically aren't robots because they're piloted? They're just humanoid piloted machines.
That's an interesting point.
Do you have any other memories of actual, like, artificially intelligent robots?
Probably when I was at some point in primary school and we were shown a promotional video for Asimo, the Honda robot.
Okay, cool.
Who until fairly recently I kept a close eye on the development of his various skills and abilities. So as far as a real robot, I was quite a big Asimo fan for well over a decade. So.
Oh well, Asimo can navigate irregular terrain.
That's impressive.
Yeah, the Veritech models, you can actually get models now from the Masterpiece series, and they are 110% cartoon accurate. The models in their humanoid form look like the cartoon in every mode. They transform like the cartoon. The Masterpiece series started with those Macross fighters, but has since branched out into the Transformers line.
I've heard
So you can
Transformers
get-
Masterpiece ones.
Yeah, you can get, for example, Starscream, who looks and transforms exactly how he looked and transformed in the cartoon.
I'm not sure where you're up to in the conversation, but I have a fantastic, genuine robot-related story.
Go
That's
for it.
full of action and adventure and man vs. wild and the only thing it doesn't have is the eventuation of the actual robots themselves. So almost 2 years ago now,
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be given a free trip to Japan.
Mhm.
And my sister's rather quite intelligent and sciencey and all that kind of thing. And I consider myself quite sciencey, and I love to solder things and build things that don't work. And a mutual friend of Ian's and I's, James, who I was actually living with at the time, is also quite intelligent and sciencey and all that kind of thing. So I made I put a lot of effort into locating a store in Tokyo that I'd found on the internet.
Was this
And-
store by any chance in Akihabara?
It's supposed to be in Akihabara, yes. And they sell robot kits.
Nice.
There's a particular robot that I've always wanted to get my hands on called Robbie the Robot. You'll be more familiar with Robbie's far more superior and college-graduated cousin, who's currently circling the Earth in the International Space Station.
Oh,
He was sent up
the guy took him up.
prior to the Japanese astronaut. So you were, for a period of time in Japan, able to buy a weekly magazine with a different component to make your own Robbie the Robot. Which I sadly miss those concepts of, this week you get a microprocessor and the next week you get a board and all that kind of thing and make your own robot. Anyway,
Yep.
I made 3 or 4 attempts. Now, bear in mind I had no guide. I had zero grasp of anything other than thank you, sorry, and I think I stepped in poo in Japanese.
So could you run that one by us? Maddie, could you run? I think I stepped in poo. Just run that by us.
That's more of a gesturing thing, I think. So I made 3 attempts to go to what I honestly thought was one of the most terrifying places. It's so esoteric, Akihabara. You go there and you're assaulted with signs and imagery of all of these commercial things, but if you want to get deep down into it, you've got to go up to those shifty little elevators in the dingy, badly painted building and go up 3 levels in a shaky, rusty, rattling elevator and open up onto this amazingly well-kept and modern train shop or whatever. So I was looking for this particular robot store in these environments. The first attempt, total failure. I couldn't even find the street that it was supposed to be on, and anybody that I approached to ask the directions with my smartphone map greeted me with just pure terror and ran away. I had a friend over there who was able to help me at one point locate it. He couldn't locate it, so we went to a department store and we said to this guy in the department store, in the electronics department, "Do you have any robots?" That he could speak relative amount of English. He's studied in America, and this attendant went, "Robots?" And my friend Jimmy, in fluent Japanese, re-explained. And this guy kind of looked into it. Huh? You mean models, like the ones I referenced earlier, which they all love to make. They make the little Gundam models and that kind of thing. And we went, not really. So we got on the website of the store that we were initially looking for, pulled up a video, showed him the video, and he went, "RC? As in RC cars? No, not RC cars." We found another video that showed them assembling this said robot. Now keep in mind, I'm in the technology capital of the country that's considered the technological leaders in robotics, all this lovely stuff. And this electronics salesman looked at us and went, "This is amazing. When you find this store, please come back and tell me where it is." He had no idea. We never found it. I found the location.
Oh.
I walked up dark, rickety stairs that remind me of, some discreet back alley brothel entrance, past all of these empty floors full of blank shelving, no signage, nothing. Got to the top and it was something, I can't remember now, it was something completely unrelated to robotics. And so after 3 unsuccessful tries, meeting an expert who had utterly no idea what we were talking about and was more impressed about the fact that this was supposed to be available in his own country than I was, I never found the store. To this day, I still have absolutely no idea where this store was. I'm still robotless.
Was it definitely true?
I'd seen...
Was Japan trolling you?
Well, I'd seen a series on YouTube where an American and a Japanese actress went around and they showed you highlights, and they were there. I saw it. They were in the shop. The dude was like taking little packets off the thing, where all you needed was a soldering iron, and you could build like a little robot that infrared commands and all that kind of thing. Never found it. Absolutely no idea. Devastated. All of that way, 9 hours on a plane, and I didn't come back to the robot. I was utterly devastated.
Can I just say, next time that happens, you need me with you, because I don't know how I do it, and I don't know what it is. It's just my aura. I have an inherent knack for finding things without trying. Partly trying, like, I'll find the location, and then I will just naturally gravitate towards that thing. It's like, oh, we're here. I even do that in like RPGs. I'm like, oh, I'll go this way, and it's not the way you're supposed to go. It's like, oh, I found a treasure chest with the best armor possible for this level of character. And that also translates into my real life when I just aimlessly walk around.
So even now I'm able to find, internet sites with pictures, but they date back 5-7 years ago. So
okay.
Do you think it just closed down then, and like the rickety stairs you went up were actually where it was?
It quite possibly could have been. There was meant to be 3 locations, and the other 2 locations were in a far less tourist-friendly area, so I didn't even try those locations. I think what struck me most about the adventure was the fact that every time I asked for help, whether it was from Jimmy, who is a software engineer and a coding scriptwriter, he had absolutely no idea these places existed. And yeah, a guy who was head of an electronics department in a store a few blocks away had absolutely no idea these places existed. So it was more the The mystery of
Robbie the Robot, I just did an image search and I got the Forbidden Planet Robbie
Yeah.
the Robot. I couldn't find... So if you could provide a link or a screen share or something of the sort. Now, I want to tell you something. Now, you're saying it's these one a week type things. You know, this week you get the whatever and next week too. Your best port of call from my last experience in Japan would have been the bookshop, Kinokuniya. Because I was blown away by the amount of those kinds of things, whatever they're called, had. The stuff that here in Australia or the UK, the US, you would get in a newsagents. News agencies do not exist in Japan. You either get your magazines from the 7-Eleven, the fast food, the what are they called, the convenience store, or the bookshop. There was one build your own train set. You got a piece of track or a carriage or an engine or whatever each week. My favorite one that I saw. Before I get to my favorite one, hang on. Here we go. Macross, issue number 42, with a Veritech fighter on it. This because I bought this thinking it was a one-off, but then I thought, hang on, that's issue 42. This is part of a series, all in Japanese, just about this, and there's one section of the bookstore dedicated to these. What are you screen sharing with? Oh, Maddie,
I
talk.
mispronounced the name completely.
Oh, Robbie. Yes, that is not Robbie.
It's
Yep.
Kibo.
Ah.
Oh, cool. Maddie, say something so that your screen comes up on my screen. I want to see that again. Oh, I can just click you. Never mind.
Yes.
Well, this reminds me. We're talking about Asimo, and I always thought Asimo was, cool because of what it can do. But I found out about it at the same time as the much better looking Curio, which was another little robot that they made, and
Yeah.
that thing was gorgeous. And I think they've discontinued it now, which is a real shame because it was lovely, and it looks a bit like that.
I've always wanted Sony to pick that up again and make like a Curio Junior that just did the basics.
Yeah.
Did like just the walking and just the dancing without all of that fancy facial recognition and all of that stuff and whatnot. Anyway, just quickly getting back to these weekly magazines, my favorite one by far, and this was just so Japanese. Make your own monster movie.
Ooh.
Which goes like the first one actually came with a little mini camera, and you got the set pieces and the monsters over the various weeks. So you'd have a city with your various giant monsters and your little camera, so you could make your monster movies. And it talked about what goes into making monster movies and like really in-depth stuff, which I thought was brilliant. But that's nothing to do with robots. Maddie, do you have any more to say? Hey, when you went to Japan, Maddie, were you looking for Robbie the Robot, and maybe that's why they didn't know?
I actually just put a link in the chat section of the store that I was looking for. Now, the website's considerably old, but at the time that I was there, my smartphone it had specials on the web store that had the current date, and there was definitely an online presence that was current, and so I wasn't completely insane.
Okay, so where's the address?
Oh, good luck. I didn't look. That's just Gizmodo.
Yeah, awesome robot.
And is that what did you have that article at the time? Is this what you were going
No, we had the official website. So because I was able to access the internet, we had the website, we had the map location. Jimmy tried to call them as well and didn't get through to anybody. So it was a big mystery. I really felt like I was, knocking
Just
on the
that
SS
far
headquarters
away.
in Berlin or something, and they were hiding from me.
Mhm. Here's a robot we haven't talked about: Lego Mindstorms.
Ah.
When I was much younger, before the whole Mindstorms craze, I was big into Technic Lego at this time. There was just a very basic robotic thing. Again, you could make this robot mechanical arm. Then I never got into Mindstorms robotics. But then Mindstorms robotics, which is by far the best-selling Lego kit ever, is something that I would have liked if I was younger when it came out. You know, it's basically a programmable bit that you build around. And this store looks amazing. So my next port of call is to find out where it is. There's nothing on here that. There's nothing. Oh wait, hang on. Is this it? Tsukumo.co.jp. Is this the official website?
Quite possibly.
So now we have to find its. Ah, found it. Its address. Now we have to go and look on Google Maps. Is that it? Can you just confirm if that's the site?
That's the one.
Okay.
Look at that storefront. How could you miss that? I mean, that's like boom. There's a sign and signs and more signs.
Yeah, and a friendly smiley. Is that a smiley face at the top?
Probably.
Here we go. Is that? Oh, there's multiple locations. Oh wait, no, there it is. There it is. Hang on. Got to get this little orange man. Go to Street View. There it is. You're gonna hate me, Maddie. I'm 90% certain I've been in that store. And because that is, hang on, I'll do a screen share. And screen share incoming. Ba-dum. So we can all see this store that Maddie missed out on. Does any of this look familiar to you, Matthew?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. But proper familiar or just like generic familiar?
As in, I walk past many times.
Yeah,
look at the sign. Look at that big green sign. How do you miss that shit?
Yeah. Tsukumo, there's a store there, and we'll go down here just a bit. Whee! Yeah, there it is right there.
Look at that.
And so you actually literally walked past it 3 or 4 times.
Yep.
There it is. Right there.
Massive green building.
And that looks like a train bridge just behind it.
Yes.
Next time you're there, Maddie, if I happen to be with you at the time, we'll make a note of going there.
We'll beeline there. We'll be all up in their face and find all their robots.
Yeah, we'll make that our first port of call. And there's, of course, a maid cafe.
They are fantastic. They have nothing to do with robots, but they're hilarious.
With 2 of the girls' faces blanked out, which makes me think they're public figures, like celebrities, but again, nothing to do with robots.
No, that's actually a Google Street View thing, is that they blur out your face.
Yeah, but 2 of the girls... Oh, hang on. I think I've got it backwards, because 2 of the girls, you can see their faces. So now I'm thinking the 2 girls' faces we can see are in the public eye, so like from a pop group or something, and the other 2 girls are just 2 girls.
Well, or it just didn't work, because they don't do it by hand, it's all algorithm.
Maybe they're
that's
robots.
True.
And the facial recognition software doesn't pick them up because they're robots.
Yeah, it recognizes robots.
Oh.
And, Maddie, did you go at all on a bullet train?
No.
Oh, because
I stayed in the center of Tokyo the whole time.
Right. Because there's no actual robots on there, but it is very advanced technology to the point where you almost wouldn't be surprised if the train transformed into a robot and walked off. Very, very advanced.
Well, that's interesting. Do we actually have any robots with us at the moment? Anybody? Any of the four of us? Does anybody have a robot in their house?
That I can just go and grab.
I don't think so, no.
Do action figures count?
Well, would the things like Siri and
Yeah.
those kind of things, would they count as artificial intelligence?
Siri would.
Probably.
So technically my phone counts under that logic.
Hmm.
I'm going to see if I can buy an artificial intelligence brain for my phone.
Haha.
I have somewhere. I have my old piece of crap laptop that I called Skynet because I thought it was hilarious.
You thought your laptop was hilarious, or that an old piece of crappy laptop you would call Skynet, and because of the implications?
When I bought it for school for my undergraduate, because when I first got it, it worked perfectly, but then all the graphics and stuff was just like, oh yeah, all the programs that you used to use, we just released like 4,000 updates, and your graphics card is way out of date. And so when I got it, they're like, name your PC. So I was like, Skynet.
Mm-hmm.
Because why not?
I found Jarvis.
Oh, nice. From
Nice.
Iron Man.
My computer's called Chock-a-Block, but you have to be British to get that.
Chock-a-Block.
It's good, though, I promise.
Well, my newest one is named Octavia, so.
All right, so another side of robots that I think we should talk about, just because I'm a big fan of them, is animatronics.
Oh, puppetry and whatnot.
Essentially, yeah, not exactly robots, but kind of the thing that we're more likely to have seen that resembles them.
Like the old Ninja Turtles from the old Ninja Turtle movie, the guys in the suits.
That you could say that, I guess, yeah. Although I'm more talking about the sort of thing you can actually go and see at Disneyland and the like.
The Chuck E. Cheeses.
Yes.
Robots,
Now
they're like this.
God.
Chuck E. Cheese is an example of this. We didn't have Chuck E. Cheese in the UK, but what we did have was there was a theme park where, just for anyone who doesn't know, Chuck E. Cheese is one of what was at the time a couple of different competing children's restaurants with an animatronic band that would perform on stage, and we didn't have that here. But what we did have was there's a theme park in Yorkshire, which bought probably the best of those, which is the Rockafire Explosion from from Showbiz Pizza, and this is the one which CeeLo Green had in one of his videos and things like this, and they had that just in a dedicated theatre. And that was absolutely amazing to behold. So I was about 10 years old, or 11, it's 10, and you walk into this theatre. They're not even, they didn't go with the selling pizza route. It was literally just a little theatre they built at this theme park. The curtains open. Well, actually, they were. In fact, when I went in, they were already open because it was malfunctioning. So you walked in, and there were these giant robots, these animals things, sat on the stage behind musical instruments. You had a gorilla on the keyboard, you had a dog on drums, things like this. And they were just these, as you walked past them, gigantic, hulking figures to a 10-year-old. And me and my brother were looking at each other going like, oh no, what's this going to be? Whatever it is, it's going to be frightening, because they had these frightening rubber faces. Anyone who doesn't know this should Google Rock-Afire, A-F-I-R-E, Rock-Afire Explosion, and you'll see what I mean. But the thing is, that these things were very competently made and animated, and the actual movement of them when the machine was working properly was amazing. And couple that with another factor, which was that the between songs, the characters would talk to one another. And I recently heard one of their, a recording of one of their shows where they would talk to each other, and it confirmed what I remembered, which is that they were so naturalistic as to suggest that at least some of the dialogue was improvised by the people doing the voices. And because it just sounds like natural conversation some of the time, but then they'll with a line or a joke that's obviously scripted. And that was so weird to see these machines flapping around in front of you having a quite natural conversation with one another. And it was just completely compelling to me. I absolutely loved it. But this is because I have always been a fan of that sort of stuff, thanks to my visit to this wonderful castle that they have here in the UK, where the dungeon of this castle has been outfitted with several kind of animatronic displays of things like fairy tales and ghosts and things like that. And so ever since that, which I was like 2 or 3 when I first saw that, and we went back every year throughout my childhood because I was that into it, that ever since that I've just been fascinated by animatronics. And just a couple of years ago, I had a look. Of course, the most famous ones are the ones at Disneyland, and Disney coined the term animatronics, audio animatronics, as he called it, because it was to sync up with sound. And so they're the most famous ones, such as the Abraham Lincoln robot and things like that, and It's a Small World. But now, they've just recently perfected the technology to the point where you can't see the seams. They have rubber skin. I think they always did, but now they're really using it. And basically, the current generation of animatronics they have at Disneyland are just completely amazing. And allow me to give you an example of that. Hold on.
There was a theme park here in my hometown called Fantasy Glades, and it was one of those ones where when you got to a certain point, you would go into this mystical castle and push a button that pushed very, very deeply, and it was on a time delay. So then the lights would light up, and these animatronics would act out a scene from Cinderella, and as you walked around from scene to scene, it would be a different scene with these dolls just doing very basic, life-size dolls. Then you went along, and then you walked through a cave and got scenes from Snow White.
I'll see your castles and dungeons and raise you one of the most messed up experiences I've ever had.
Yep.
About 2 or 3 years, my father lived. I split parents, so I only ever saw him on holidays, and he lived in a place called Dubbo. Mm-hmm. Dubbo is one of those places where it's so rural that you can only find these places in a desert. Somewhere like, an American desert or an African desert. Mm-hmm. Not the kind of thing you're ever going to find in Europe. And in Dubbo, they had decided to keep the old jail because, of course, being a convict nation, most of our history is convicts, Bob Howard kind of, Mm-hmm. We don't kind of have much to go on. Until we had the Olympics in 2000, there was nothing else to brag about but convicts. So they outfitted this prison in its original state, with all of its original furniture and torture devices and barbaric doctors' quarters and all these things, with some of the most ghoulish and ill-kept animatronics, exactly as you guys described, except instead of acting out a fairy tale or some fantastical historical event, they would be moaning on the doctor's table or rattling the cages and things and telling you their horror stories. And it was so horribly disturbing. I'll never live it down. I did go back, I don't know, a few years after the first time. I noticed that they'd taken away a lot of them and had just left the empty dioramas for you to look at the equipment and the furniture. But
that's a shame.
Terrifying. No, it was fantastic. It was horrible.
How old were you at the time?
I would have been anywhere between... No, wait, I can figure this out. anywhere between 8 and 10.
So
And I
9.
had to travel, and I think only Ian will fully understand the gist of this. I had to travel by myself on a plane from Townsville to Dubbo. We're talking,
Yeah.
gosh, maybe 8 hours. 2 flights.
Yeah.
I had to transfer myself at Brisbane.
As
So,
a
yeah.
9-year-old.
As a 9-year-old, I travelled on my own.
What?
Yeah, I used to have an escort from the flight crew at all times, but then when I transferred, they just left me alone, and it was just up to me to get on the next plane. So I don't think you're allowed to do it anymore. I mean, this is 20 years ago, so.
That I think laws would be different now. Like these days, you would have to have an adult with you.
Definitely.
That's quite an experience.
Yeah,
to have.
yeah. So it's horrifying.
Can
And the hideous ghouls.
Yeah. Okay, David.
Oh, well, I was just going to show you 2 videos, or rather link you to them. And the first one is an example of a good and pleasant animatronic, and it's at 4 minutes 17 into this video, which I've timestamped, and it is the Ursula the Sea Witch from the recent Little Mermaid ride at whichever Disneyland it happens to be. And that is an example of what I was talking about before, where they've now basically just more or less perfected the technology to the point where you can have these full-scale characters moving in a very fluid and realistic way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing, right?
It is.
Yeah, see what I mean? It's just stupid. It's stupid how good it is. And then the other one I wanted to show... Yeah?
No, go on. I'll share my little bit about animatronics about when you're after this.
Okay, well, the other video is Female Body. And this is an art installation somewhere. And it's basically like the latest news from the animatronic world. And it's just really creepy and well worth a look. And it's essentially just a woman dancing in a mirror.
It's a robot.
And it's a robot, and it has this creepy face. Its arms move amazingly articulately, so it looks very real. And then it'll suddenly stop and start delivering this monologue in a man's voice, and its mouth will move, and it will lock eyes with you. That's the technology it's got. Anyone who comes up to it and looks at it in the mirror, it will turn and look at them. And so I think it does that at some point in the video. It locks on to the person who's filming. So very, very creepy indeed.
Although it's on a metal bar, there's a metal bar holding it in place.
Yep.
So I'm wondering how good it would be without the metal bar. Although its motions are quite fluid for a robot.
It wouldn't move at all. The metal bar is where it connects through that.
But that's have you seen these Japanese all robot science fiction movies have certainly explored the idea of using robots for adult purposes. And now the Japanese have these very lifelike, very creepily lifelike dolls just for that.
There's actually it's one of my favorite things, and it's one of the most true things ever said about robots. Was that same guy that was talking about the Asimov full motion video game based off Asimov's robots. Was he said this, because the robot shows up and it's basically a fully human replicant of it's a fully human robot. Like it looks like nigh identical to a human because they obviously had to have a human actor, and in order to go along with some of the themes of Asimov's work, and he basically stops the video and he just goes, this isn't true. This is not realistic, because we all know that when a scientist creates the first fully human robot, it will be a woman. Because his intent will be to have sex with it.
He might just have been into guys.
Yeah, but but that was something he just didn't bring up. But that was his whole that was his 2 seconds of comedy he threw into the video. Was just no, this robot. It was just something he did, and the guy, it's his brand of humor. But it was just something that the whole the anatomically correct robots. But yeah,
I mean, it's when when we do create the robot that is indistinguishable from a person, that will happen in the first week. That's definitely true. Because maybe not in the first week, because probably the scientists, the roboticists working on it. See, I just imagined a mad scientist character as I went straight to that. Those guys they will respect the technology more, and I feel like they probably won't. But when it goes to market, that's going to be one of the first.
The kid bashes.
They'll have this. They'll have like a robot expo. They'll have like the nanny model, which is basically babysit your kids while you're at the grocery store or while you're on vacation. Then they'll have the friend model, which is basically the house, keeps you company. And then somebody at the expo, they'll basically be interviewing people. And they'll have the whole crowd of people asking questions about, can it do this, can it do that? And some guy, might not be a guy, it might be a woman, somebody in the back of the crowd will go shoot, you'll see a hand shoot up. Any more questions? Can I have sex with it? And someone will ask that question, and I just can't wait for that day to happen just because I want to see the look on the scientist's face.
But you know what? There's actually, just taking that actually seriously for a moment, there is a strong argument that's a strong argument, I don't know, but there's certainly an argument which is that until you can, it hasn't been achieved. You know what I mean? The fully human-esque robot is yet to be achieved. Until it can interact with other people in every way that people can interact with other people, right?
Yes.
And I guess the real moment when we know we've done it, that we've made a robot that's like a humanoid robot, is when they can actually give birth to other robots. That's the day we've nailed it.
And that's also the day we're... Yeah, but I just can't wait for the look on that scientist's face, because I just want to see him sitting there with the microphone being asked this question seriously by someone, and the scientist what? Could you please repeat the question?
But for me, this raises... go ahead.
I was just going to say, Zach was about to say that's also the day we...
That's also it's this event in science fiction where basically if robots can actually start replicating themselves, it basically marks. Yeah, it basically starts. It's one of the things in sci-fi that they used to mark as the end of human civilization, because if robots can just reproduce themselves, what function do we have?
Okay. Anyway, Matthew, you were going to say?
Well, it raises for me the question of parallel development and compartmentalizing of robotics, and it's an absolutely revolting place to start the mind map. But one of the first questions that will be asked, and it probably won't be a hand up the back, I actually predict it'll be some rather successful, well-educated and well thought of journalist who will ask the question.
Right.
Can we sleep with it? On that front, there's already plenty of technology that, while in itself is not artificial intelligence, will become and will be the proto-form of the technology that will enable us to... Same as we're having prosthetic arms, we have functions like Siri. One of Asimov's books, I think it's Asimov, or it might even be Arthur C. Clarke. I get them confused because I always read one and after the other. That they actually create the first artificial intelligence is technically the internet. They name it after a Greek philosopher. I can't remember which one they name it after. Then they create two more, and in this book, I can't remember what happens now. It's something to do with the sun, and the earth starts to fall apart. And as the internet starts to disintegrate, the artificial intelligence essentially it's developing Alzheimer's ultimately, and until it ceases to exist. But they then fight off, backup copies of themselves into the cosmos and all this wonderful stuff. But everything we need is there, and I think the only reason that we don't have fully fledged artificial intelligence is the same reason that we're still sending troops to the Middle East.
Yeah.
As soon as we create an artificial intelligence, the first thing they're going to do is look at us and go, "Are you kidding? Really?" Because they are going to have the accumulated knowledge of humanity. They're going to be at the forefront of all of our science and engineering. They're going to have access and input from the greatest minds of our time, not just as engineers, but as philosophers and physicists and all these wonderful things. So really, the same reason that we can't have world peace is the same reason that we can't have fully fledged animatronic artificial intelligence, because we cannot agree. So the guys in Japan who've made the fantastic face that interacts, and the guys who are grafting arms, and the people who are developing Siri, and the people in California who are making private parts that can be interacted with, they can't get along. It's not businessly, it's not a good business idea to actually go, your part and my part go together, but once they do, who owns it? Who's going to profit from it? So
yeah, there's a boundary. There's sort of this boundary that we put in place, as we don't want. We can have all the disparate parts. We just don't want to have that line crossed where we're combining. Well, we want to eventually, but we're too. It's kind of sort of this point where we're not ready to actually say, okay. Yeah, okay, let's take your Siri and put it inside of this inside of the face, or inside of the animatronic. But something that Dave brought up when he showed the Ursula, I had actually 5 years ago, I went to Disneyland at Christmas, and this is the original story I was going to go for, but then we went off on that really weird and awkward tangent, which I apologize for. Was that I went to Disneyland at Christmas, and anyone who has never been to Disneyland at Christmas, don't go at Christmas. Mm-hmm. The happiest place on earth turns into the world's largest insane asylum. Because it's just literally walls of people that are all there to celebrate the holiday, and they all want to ride the rides with you. And it's basically like you're jam-packed against the gates and the walls of this place, and everybody's there for the same purpose, to celebrate Mickey Mouse and Christmas at the same time. And so it's really maddening. It's just this maddening experience because it's just walls to wall of people, which it ordinarily is, but this time they're all there to relax on a vacation on a holiday that's supposed to be peaceful, but they're all waiting in lines. So it's basically the patience.
How does this differ from Disneyland the rest of the time?
Rest of the time, it's actually a little bit more well organized. It's just that they have more parades and more stuff, so basically it's more chaotic because there's more parades and celebrations, but they actually redid the Haunted Mansion to be themed as the Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most impressive things I ever saw was they had a fully animatronic Jack Skellington that at the very end basically went like this and moved and basically said Merry Christmas, Happy Halloween, and did the whole thing. And when I saw it, I couldn't see, like you said, I could not see the seams. I could not see the animatronic. It actually looked really good. And so I was impressed. Granted, I like the Haunted Mansion the way it was, so I'm just sitting there like the one lone grump on Christmas because I actually wanted to see the Haunted Mansion for all its original glory, and not just Tim Burtonified. But the other side to the animatronics was: has anyone heard of Five Nights at Freddy's?
Yes. Is right. Last night I was out with friends, and I just want to tell you this to introduce this because we were telling them the story of what happened when I found out about Five Nights at Freddy's. This is I promise you this is true. Only you, Zach, are going to laugh at this. If the other two don't know the game, but basically, Abby, my girlfriend, came home one day and she said, "Dave, there's a game that I think you should watch Let's Plays of because it's a horror game, and it's just your sort of thing." And I swear to you, I replied, "Why? What? Is it like animatronics getting all creepy or something?"
Yeah.
It has been very clearly established what my sort of thing is, apparently.
And so, to explain this, Five Nights at Freddy's is, as Dave said, it is a horror game where you are basically the night watchman in a Chuck E. Cheese style restaurant where it's basically people come in to bring the kids in, they play arcade games, they eat pizza, and there's an animatronic band, but at night the animatronics come alive and basically roam this place, and your job as the night watchman is to make sure they don't escape. That being said, you're confined to this little tiny room with a computer monitor and 2 switches to close 2 doors and a power meter that continually goes down. And the first night is really uneventful. You just see the animatronics move around, and this guy narrates this story to you about how, granted, if I had to sing those same songs for every night for X amount of years, I'd probably go crazy too. And he basically explains this, by the way, if they see you, they'll probably assume you're a metal endoskeleton without a costume. So they'll grab you and shove you inside of one. Now, this wouldn't be too bad if the costume wasn't filled with metal mesh and wiring and basically cross beams, so it'll basically crush your skull. And so the whole game is you trying to survive this while monitoring your power as these animatronics actively try to murder you. And watching Let's Plays of this are hilarious because you get the people who heard about the game. One of the best ones I saw, and the one I watched frequently, was the Markiplier Let's Play. Which involved him. Basically, he starts out and it's very uneventful, it's just a couple of jump scares, and then he screws up because there's one character you have to keep monitoring because he'll jump out and then run at you. And so he basically he goes, I don't like that sound, and he pulls up the monitor and he goes to the hallway. Right as he sees this thing run past the camera, he screams right as the thing leans in the door and lets out this unholy mechanical shriek at him. And you just see his video reaction shot of him screaming bloody murder, grabbing his headphones, going, ah!
Is this kind of like a video game version of Westworld?
Pretty much. Except these animatronics are genuinely evil, and it's not a programming error.
Right.
Speaking of evil, I found a picture of the evil Dubbo mannequin, so I'll pop it into the group chat.
Yes, please.
Okay, I got it. Oh,
so
wow.
Keep in mind, these things move and talk.
Yes! Oh, they're really realistic.
Oh.
And they're creepy as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
So they're the only photos I could find, but they were terrifying.
Oh, there's nothing on YouTube?
I didn't check YouTube.
YouTube.
Speaking of a different kind of robot, which we've already sort of established, David established early, that, mechanical arms building cars are thought of by some as robots, but the definition of robots being machines to assist and help mankind. Getting back to Japan, in the same street we were looking at earlier, there's a new type of a robot. And anyone who's been to Japan will know all about the vending machines. Won't they, Maddie? Here on the right, we've got 2 regular bog standard vending machines. But here on the left, we've got the more technology robotic. I think those are vending machines. I'm not 100% sure. My point is that you can get very highly advanced touchscreen. Actually, the more I look at this, the more I think that those are not vending machines, or if they are, the vending machines for a very particular type of product. If you have a good look there. But yeah, my point is, even vending machines are slowly becoming robots to the point where I think one day Japan will have probably robots on wheels going around, would you like a beverage? And they could probably measure your body temperatures with heat sensors to see if you're dehydrated. And that
I don't know
kind of
why
thing.
they don't. They can do that now. I think that will be very soon.
Yeah, easily within our lifetimes.
I actually recently I went to lunch with my aunt a couple weeks ago, and we sat down at the table in the restaurant, and they had a touchscreen menu.
Those are
like
common in Sydney.
What was that? Sorry, Matthew?
The touchscreen menus are really common in Sydney.
Well, it's starting to become a thing here in the States. Like they're popping up a lot more. But this is exactly what the host said. I mean, I'm probably mincing a couple of words, but this is almost word for word what the host said. He said, "Oh, by the way, here's a touchscreen menu. You can order your food through here if you don't want to talk to an actual server." And I was just like, I literally almost stopped and said, "I'm sorry, what?" And so that's the other part of robots that I guess we hinted at, but basically when robots start to machines replace people. Like those jobs that working in power plants and I don't know if has anyone here ever listened to the album Act 2, The Father of Death by the Protomen?
No. Well, I haven't.
It is anyone here a fan of Mega Man?
Hold on.
I'm extremely
believe,
aware of Mega Man.
I think my friend Brent may have played me this, or parts of it, just the other day. This is this is a sort of it's like a prog musical of Mega Man, right?
Yeah, it's a rock opera based off of Mega Man.
He played me the part where there's a woman saying that no matter what you do, there will always be light, and then she gets killed halfway through a song.
Yeah, there's actually
my friend Brent played me that just this week.
Yes, but it is I'll actually send I'll put a link in the chat really quick. If you haven't listened to the whole thing, it's a fantastic. It's actually the second album by the Protomen, and it's a rock opera based around Dr. Light and Dr. Wily, and basically Dr. Light's descent into basically Dr. Light creating robots to help humanity, and Dr. Wily taking advantage of him in order to rise to power. And the part you listened to, Dave, was where Dr. Light's girlfriend actually confronts Wily. Because Wily starts to have second thoughts, because Wily realized that Dr. Light's perfect helping robots that would actually help them build the cities and basically replace all the dangerous jobs people didn't want to do. Wily basically said, Thomas, if you replace just like a few pieces, you actually get powerful military robots. And that actually, if we just did that, we could actually rise to power and rule over this entire world. You and me, side by side. And Light was just like, that's the opposite of what I want to do. I want to help. I want to help humanity. And Wily basically told him, you're a moron. And we know the rest of the story. But basically, Wily has second thoughts because he's like, I don't want to hurt my best friend. So he actually goes to see Emily, the girlfriend, and basically that's why she says there will always be light. She's basically telling him, you can do whatever you want to this city, but he will always help us. And that's why she kills her. That's why he kills her. It's because that's the only thing that could hurt Dr. Light. Yep. But it's a brilliant little rock opera about basically the backstory of Mega Man. And in fact, the very first album, just the self-titled The Protomen, is actually the first act of the rock opera focusing on Mega Man. But back to the task at hand, the idea of robots replacing our jobs, but like the really dangerous jobs, like mining and working in like nuclear power plants. And in fact, has anyone actually ever seen the anime version of Metropolis?
Yes.
It's basically, that's one of the subplots, is that robots have actually taken the place of all the menial jobs nobody wants.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, you have the ultra wealthy that make the robots,
Mm-hmm.
the ultra wealthy that employ the robots, and then you have all the citizens that were displaced because of the robots. And so it's something interesting to think about, I guess, with robots, is that it will kind of cross that point where what happens when we try to replace certain jobs certain jobs would be really convenient to replace them with robots, like when we were talking about the Fukushima, putting the robot in there to basically help the cleaning effort.
But this is something we're past that point. Like, we've done that already. Like,
right.
Wherever we can, we've replaced human jobs with robots right now. Like the mechanical arms building cars, like the touch screen menu. You know, any restaurant with a touch screen menu doesn't need someone to come over and take your order.
Right. But I'm saying more like the dangerous, like the more hazardous job, like the ones that actually pose like legitimate threats to human. I mean, there's always the threat to human life, regardless of the job. But I mean, the ones that are like hazardous waste cleanup, or I mean, it happened. I mean, like the mine collapses and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is something I would actually like to see in our lifetime. And if we ever got to this point with robotics, I think it'd be great. Is disaster relief robots.
Yeah.
Like, there's an earthquake, cities in shambles. We send in like Coast Guard and all that, and basically international relief effort. But you send in these like robots that actually like tunneled, like basically go down into the rubble and basically like they find a person and then basically put out a signal like person found.
Well, the thing is, mining. Let's say mining. That's because that's kind of what we're talking about here in this scenario.
Yeah.
That's something that technically a robot could do, but it's useful to have for it to be a person, because they can make millions of judgments all at the same time about, like, is this going to be safe? Is that where we should mine, and so on. So maybe the answer is to keep having people do the jobs, unless they're ridiculously dangerous. Like, for example, I could do with never seeing another picture of, you know, workmen building a bridge or whatever, sitting on the arm of a crane millions of miles above a city. You know those pictures.
Yeah.
That is not something people should be expected to do, and machines are perfect for that. But in something like a mining situation, is the solution to have a robot, a safety robot, on their team, so that anytime something like a cave-in starts to happen, it kicks into gear and, you know, grabs falling rocks or whatever, things like that.
Yeah, that would actually be pretty good. Like, you actually have like that. The one robot, like, basically, it could even work along, like, essentially you have like the foreman or the supervisor, and then he has like his helper droid who basically like follows behind him, and for like basically what he is like he takes notes for him, like essentially he records things, he records video feed for the miners, and then as soon as the disaster happens, all of a sudden he kicks into
rescue mode.
Mm-hmm. And even if the situation is the robot can't help very much, it's like I was saying, it sends out a signal like, we're here. Like, basically sends out that signal to the network on top, outside outside of the mine, basically saying, we're here. We're alive. Please send aid. So.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think the US military are actually working on a humanoid robot that does just that, which would, as I said earlier in the podcast talking about Asimo, that was very much a business robot, and Japan workers asking Honda to send them down, what the US military is working on, is a humanoid one that has very much hands and can do the heavy lifting, that has, superhuman strength, that could lift a big heavy metal bar off a human as effortlessly as we could lift a plank of wood. And the cleanup, you don't need to worry about robots. You probably do need to worry about them absorbing radiation, but you don't need to worry about them dying from radiation.
Yeah.
Once the robot goes in, it's leave it up to the robot.
Then that brings up the scary topic of militarized robots.
Oh,
Yeah.
And we're
Here's the
back to
thing.
short circuit.
I guarantee you, because trust me, my government, the military that protects my government, I guarantee you there is somebody trying to figure out how to make the helper robot. There's some guy sitting in a back room going, what changes do we have? The Dr. Wily basically sitting there. What changes do we have to make in order to make
It's
this
done.
robot? Yeah.
It's done. They've done it. That's what drone strikes are. Those are robots.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's
Those
true.
are military robots.
Well,
And the big dog
Yeah.
and all of that. Yeah, there's a lot of
That
military
dog
robots
thing's
stuff going on.
terrifying.
yeah.
That's the thing, that there's the two thinkings behind robots. The Japanese robot is, the helpful servant robot that is beneficial to mankind, the butler, if you will, or the care of the aged. Then there's the American militarized robot, and that's
Meanwhile,
how
Americans
can
made walking guns. Big surprise.
Hey,
How-
yeah. Hey,
how can this
I-
robot help us win the war?
believe. Okay, Ian knows this because I talked to him about it. I have many issues with my government. I have tons of issues with their military policies, with their overall policies in general. So say what you want. Believe me, I have. When I was with Ian in Australia, we've spent many a good night talking about what was wrong.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well, I for one am looking
drones
forward
and-
to the day I get a dancing canine that can shoot invaders for me.
Right.
There actually
Sony
used to be this.
Sony have a robot dog, the Aibo or something.
There actually used to be this. I'm gonna see if I can find it. But speaking of robot dogs, there actually used to be a Duracell battery commercial where it showed this little girl who got a pet robot, like a little of those little like pet doll, like pet robot animatronic dogs that you put batteries in and it like walks around and goes bark bark and just basically does that. And it showed her getting this for Christmas. And you see this apparently it doesn't exist anymore. And it showed this little dog basically walking around as the girl's sleeping, just kind of acting like itself. And you see this guy break in to the house, and he starts to steal the jewelry and stuff. And he's like trying to take the TV, like this big. This is like the '90s, so it's this great big TV off of the stand, and the little rope animatronic dog like walks up and bumps into him, just like going bark bark, and he goes kind of laughs and nudges it away, and the dog all of a sudden goes, and you just see the commercial cuts away and it just says Duracell, the perfect battery or something, and you see the guy fly out a window as the dog's like latched onto his shirt, yanking him around the yard. And so like you were saying, Maddie, that the protector dog, except when I imagine the protector dog, I imagine the little canine thing that basically stands there, intruder walks up and it just shoots lasers out of its eyes. So
Well,
Canine.
Canine had a little gun that came out of his nose.
right.
When he followed the doctor out.
That's actually one of the few episodes I've seen.
And so that's speaking of robot dogs. Speaking of robots that are walking guns, I feel like I shouldn't go through all of today's episode without making sure that anyone listening to this who has yet to goes and watches The Iron Giant, which is possibly the best robot film that's ever been made.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say about it? Or are you
Well,
just
I've
commenting?
never seen it.
It's I mean, God, I almost don't want to say anything about it in case anyone listening hasn't seen it yet. So I won't say anything that's a spoiler, except that like it's one of those films where you think you've got the measure of it, and then it excites you all over again.
And
there
that
was,
ending.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah, you all know what I mean.
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's just a marvelous. It's a very very good film. It's got to be one of the best animated films ever, and
Mhm.
and it's being and has always been treated so badly by its distributors that it was like almost it was in the cinema for about a week. It was sort of drifted out on DVD. It's still not out on Blu-ray. It's not fair because it really is one of the best animated films in existence, and just everything about it's perfect.
I'll have to check
And
it out. I haven't
also,
seen it.
if we're talking about animated robot movies, Wall-E.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
a film that is everyone loves its first third, and then after that, reports are varied. But I like all of it,
I wasn't that
yeah.
keen on Wall-E myself.
even
Yeah.
the first bit.
Yeah, really. There were some nice bits, but to me, the whole movie just Wall-E, Eve, Wall-E. It's like, eh. I like
Oh,
the
you-
short. I like
You have no heart, so how can you speak of love?
the short Burn-E, which is a side story to that, is fantastic.
Mhm.
But what's good about? No, Zach, go.
No, I'm in that rare boat where I'm just like, I watched the first third and I'm just like, oh wow, this is really cute, and then it gets the second third and they're on the ship and I'm just like, oh my god, this just got amazing.
Oh, you prefer that part?
I like social commentary mixed with my robots, so
Yes.
I was just like, yes, this is like,
well,
I'm just like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the detail that people, because the reason why people prefer the first third of that film to the rest is purely because it's braver, because it's a silent film, and it seemed excited. It goes on for so long that it gets you excited. You're like, am I watching what is essentially a silent film, but for 2 words? That's really cool. And then it turns out not to be that. And there is this moment of like, would have been really cool if it was. But like for example, if all the humans were gone from it,
Yeah.
and it was just about the robots. But of course, that would be too bleak. But
Yeah.
what I think the detail that people miss is the fact that Wall-E, as he goes through that world, not only does he endear the humans to him and get them to essentially change their ways just by interacting with such a lovely little machine, but all the other machines start. They don't get anywhere, but they all get affected a little bit, and they get a little dose of humanity in them, and it's just beautiful to watch.
and also for me the cutest part of that entire movie is when he's basically flirting with Eve, and to impress her, he puts on Hello Dolly, grabs the hubcap, and basically just starts doing this, spinning in circles.
Yeah.
For me, that is the cutest part of that whole movie.
And doesn't he do his little move, and then his little eyebrows go up, and it's just great.
Yeah, and her reaction is just like, she doesn't get it, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's perfectly adorable.
Well, because she hasn't yet been given that little spark of humanity that he eventually gives her on. Oh, what a good film! So there you go, Iron Giant and Wall-E, the 2 best robot films.
And I think that's a good note on which to end this podcast. Also, just before we go, does anyone have any final words? Zach?
Yes, when
Final words.
Dave brought up silent film and robots, it reminded me of something.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do a screen share.
Oh, Metropolis, the original black and white.
Yes.
That is a very watchable film for a silent film. And it's good social commentary as well.
Yes, and a lot of people don't realize this the first time around, but He actually has a robot hand.
Oh, so he does.
Ah.
I think I noticed that more in the second act because it's split. It's a 3-act play.
Yeah.
Uh,
It was actually but when you said silent film and robots, I'm just like, oh, Metropolis.
mhm. Definitely recommended for any robot or silent film fans.
And I have a last thing to say as well, which is
Yep.
that you can indeed get the Omnibot 2000 on eBay, and it is indeed many, many hundreds of pounds. It's usually around 800. The
Ooh.
cheapest one currently is 300 plus 20 quid postage, and this is in pounds, so it'd be more in dollars. So it's.
Yep.
I'm not going to be buying one today.
No. Maddie, do you have any final thoughts?
I was just going to share a video of my favorite, one of my favorite bands in the world, who wrote a song to promote the little cute Japanese robot that eventually ended up on the International Space Station.
Yeah,
and they wrote it in
Kobo
conjunction
Kido.
with the scientist,
Uh-huh.
Kibo.
Mhm.
And it's got dancing robots, it's got soccer playing robots, and it's got a catchy hook. So I don't think I can share it in the podcast, but I'll put the link down here. It's not a YouTube.
Oh, I've just discovered that the affordable quote-unquote Omnibot 2000, the £300 one, is missing its remote, so it can't actually be operated.
Oh, can you do an eBay Google search for remote
Probably.
for the blah
Probably,
blah blah?
yes. You can find all the spare parts, its body, its head, all of it.
Oh,
Probably
fantastic.
cheaper to make one than to buy one.
Well,
Right.
actually, there's a robot themed band, Steam Powered Giraffe.
Mm. Yep.
Is that the
Who,
band where it literally is a band made of like creepy looking animatronics that play
No.
not like in Chuck E. Cheese, but there is an actual band whose band members
I think there's
apart
quite a
from
few. Yeah.
The steam
Is there a
powered
few?
giraffe are actual humans with just face makeup on,
they,
make themselves
yeah.
look like robots.
Yeah,
Right.
they basically dress up and actually I follow their YouTube channel rather almost religiously, but they actually did a video where they where the guy he basically pretended to be a robot putting on human makeup. And so basically the video starts with him in the closet, and then basically it says like wake up cycle, and basically he does the whole, because like the whole all the members of the band studied mimes, and so they actually like they'll be in concert, and in one of their concerts they actually faked a breakdown, like as if all the robots malfunctioned, and so you see them playing their instruments, and all of a sudden like the one guy just drops his arm, and like they fake like having a complete and total robotic like malfunction on stage. And so they actually get into the and all their songs are like all their songs sort of have this pop vaudeville feel to it. So because they're all supposed to be like 1800s Victorian steampunk robots.
Mm.
And one of their songs is actually details the history of the band and how they were created by a scientist who was fighting in a war, who was fighting another scientist who created a giant steam-powered elephant, so his response was, I'll make a steampunk giraffe! Because science. So.
Right. Speaking of science,
Yeah.
there's a crowdfunding project. The massive Tesla coil that he never finished was going to power that whole city. There is this a crowdfunding thing to get that finished. It's mostly there, and they've reverse engineered the science behind it enough to know what he was thinking and where he was going, so they can finish it. Anyway, that's everyone's final thoughts, and my final thought is I'm actually currently writing a novel, quote, about robots, unquote. I'm up to about 203 pages, and it's also partly social commentary. But also, going back to a few weeks ago, it's one part of it is biopunk. Zach and another friend of mine, after having read the 3-page synopsis, have told me it's steampunk, but I'm like, no, it's science fiction, but we'll wait and see, I guess. But if the publisher says steampunk's popular right now, that's how we should market it, then so be it. Anyway, so everyone's said our final thoughts, so thank you for coming this week. See you again next week for a topic I have yet to decide, and we'll see all of you next week.
Bye.
Till next time.